overcoming the urge to panic. There's a lot of things that I learned while training for this underwater rock run through doing free diving and all these things, right? And one of the things that I wasn't expecting to learn was how to overcome the urge to panic. So today I'm doing some dynamic breath hold training. I'm out walking and holding my breath. And some of the things that you learn while you're learning how to hold your breath and do free diving and stay underwater for long periods of time is you start to learn your body's steps towards panicking. The very first time I tried to, hold my breath for as long as I could, right? You got to get your baseline and know where you're starting. It was less than a minute, and I was holding my breath, and my body was just like, all right, it's time to breathe, let's go. And I was just holding my breath as long as I could, and then had to breathe. What ends up happening is you start learning more about what your body is doing, right? And so you learn that the urge to breathe doesn't come from a lack of oxygen, but rather it comes from a buildup of CO2 in your body. Then you start learning the techniques for developing CO2 tolerance. So what you need to do is overcome that urge to breathe, which is breathing is probably the most natural thing that we do, right? Trying to overcome that urge to breathe, right? You start to learn a lot of things about yourself, right? About your mind and where your mind goes when it's starting to panic. So when I hold my breath, first, I feel it, obviously, in my chest. And you learn to relax through that feeling. And so for me, everything around my chest starts to tighten up. And when you learn to relax through that and you just let your body relax, you just tell your body, hey, I'm not going to breathe yet. And you just let it relax. Then your body starts to relax a little bit. But then, the thoughts start creeping in. And your brain kind of goes into what I would call a little bit of a tunnel vision mode, where everything else kind of starts to get blocked out. You don't even notice all the other things around you. You're just focused solely on breathing. And, it's not like there's words in your brain that are talking to you, but it's just all out panic in your mind. Where it's like, breathe, breathe, breathe. And so then you learn to relax through that. And so then the next stage, right after you get pretty good at learning how to relax through that, then your mind starts playing other tricks on you. Where it's like, okay, you're going to relax through that. Okay, I got your number. And then the next time you start relaxing through that panic, and then your brain starts telling you other things. It's like, oh, this doesn't quite feel like the last time. Oh, I think you went too far. You didn't get as good a breath this time when you first held your breath. It wasn't that good a breath. You should probably just stop and try it again. And it just ultimately stays relaxed with you, and it just tries to convince you to take a breath again, right? So last week when I was doing underwater rock runs in a pool with my trainer, those were a lot of the things that were coming up. The trainer said, okay, go from A to B. And so, I'm trying to run from A to B underwater, and I get about halfway to B, and my brain is telling me, oh, you didn't get a good breath this time. You're definitely not ready. Oh, hey, we got to get a breath in. It's not that big a deal. You're almost there. It's close enough. Just go ahead and get a breath now. And it's not the panic, breathe, 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 but it's just the very calm, very logical, oh, here's why you should go up and breathe right now. Now, the cool part about all that is that during my daily life, when I'm in meetings with customers, when I'm talking to executives, when I'm going through, just my daily life and doing things, working on things for the Humility Quest or Bravo Charlie, I notice those same thoughts creeping in, and they're the same voice, the same calm, logical ways of thinking that are exactly like the voices that I get when I'm panicking. And just like how holding your breath, the urge to breathe isn't from a lack of oxygen, but rather from CO2 buildup. I see that the things that I do in my life, the decisions that I make, the times where I'm afraid to take a risk, a lot of it isn't because it's too risky. A lot of it is because my mind is going into that relaxed panic mode where it's telling me things that aren't necessarily true, but it's trying to, save me from taking a risk. So now I recognize that as my urge to panic. And I'm learning how to build up my tolerance and resistance to the urge to panic.